Alright, what's going on everyone? Today, I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Mu Yanling Celestial Wind Planeswalker Deck. As always, do keep in mind that these are not intended to be tier 1 competitive decks. If you want that, consider checking out the latest tournament results. What we'll be doing is upgrading this deck card by card, sticking to this deck's themes, and doing it on a budget as we will not exceed the retail price of this deck with our upgrade. Also, 2 quick notes, as I'm sure you're tired of hearing, but if you want the most competitive deck out of the box, I highly recommend the Challenger decks. They are amazing. Though at this point they will be rotating in a couple months. And speaking of rotation, yes, rotation is incoming, so be careful about spending too much money on a standard deck because standard cards are going to be illegal, or at least like half of them, whatever. But yeah, standard is rotating, cards are going to be rotating out, so it's just advisable to not spend a ton of money on a standard deck at this very moment. So anyway, the Mu Yanling Planeswalker deck is a mono blue deck with 3 very conflicting themes. The main game plan is to win with flyers, as you can see with Warden of Evo's Isle, Waterkin Shaman, and Winged Words. The Warden makes flyers cheaper, the Shaman gets buffed whenever we cast a flyer, and the spell lets us draw 2 cards for a single mana if we control a flyer. So the idea is simple, we want to play creatures that have flying. But then things get weird, because the deck also has a flash theme. Sort of. It has Brineborn Cutthroat, which gets a +1/+1 counter whenever we cast a creature with flash, which would be interesting if not for the fact that there are literally only 2 creatures in the deck with flash in addition to the Cutthroat. I mean, look, here's the deck list, and these are the creatures with flash. So why the heck do we have a creature that benefits from playing creatures with flash if we don't have any creatures with flash? I have no idea why this is in the deck, and frankly, I think we can drop this thing ASAP because it's completely freaking pointless. And then the deck also has a tempo theme, as we can see with Frost Links and Dungeon Geists. Once again, why? Frost Links literally doesn't have flying or flash. It doesn't synergize with anything in this deck. I mean, look, let me paint you a picture. Imagine you draw your opening hand, and the 3 creatures you draw are Brineborn Cutthroat, Waterkin Shaman, and Frost Links. I mean, what does this hand even do? The Cutthroat wants us to play flash, but we have none. The Shaman wants creatures with flying, but we have none of those either. And the Frost Links makes no sense at all, considering the deck seems to want us to play flash and flying creatures, which this one doesn't have. So it's just like, it just has too many things going on, and they don't mesh well, and they don't synergize well, and it's dumb, and it's stupid, and I hate it. So we're gonna fix this. Look, most of the deck wants us to play flyers. We have more flyers in the deck, more support for flyers, and even the Planeswalker has a major ability that basically wins the game with flyers. I mean, let's compare the deck list side by side. The left side highlights cards that have flash or care about flash, and the list on the right shows you cards that have flying or care about flying. So you see, this is a flying deck. I have no idea why the Brineborn Cutthroat is in. It makes no sense at all to me, but whatever. We're just gonna convert this thing to a mono blue flyers deck because that seems to be the main game plan anyway, so yeah, that's what we're doing. Alright, rant over. Let's get started. First off, we're gonna take out the Brineborn Cutthroats because I'm saltier than, well, a Brineborn Cutthroat, and we're going to replace it with Favorable Winds because it actually synergizes with the rest of our deck. It's pretty simple. It's a 2 mana enchantment that gives all of our flyers +1/+1, which is what we want to do with this deck because, you know, it's a flyers deck. So enough said. We're also gonna take out Waterkin Shaman for a 4th Favorable Winds because I'd rather give all of my flyers +1/+1 instead of just giving the Waterkin Shaman +1/+1. Makes sense? Waterkin Shaman is a perfect example of one of my least favorite types of cards. The kind of card that incentivizes you to play a certain type of strategy while not technically synergizing with it. So the Shaman rewards us for playing flyers, but it's not a flyer itself, and it's just like, it's a little pet peeve of mine. I hate cards that are like that. It's annoying. So we're going to replace it with something that's going to pump up every single creature we have in play and in our entire deck, because every single creature in this deck will have flying by the end of this video. So yeah, we're gonna do that. Also, we do have 2 more of these Shamans in the deck. We'll be replacing them later for sure. Next, we're gonna take out all 4 unsummons and replace them with Fairy Miscreants. Now that we have Favorable Winds, we really want to pump out as many flyers as we can, Yanling, and this type of card is particularly powerful because it allows us to fill the board with pesky little flyers that can become very deadly if we have a favorable winds or two. Plus they let us draw more cards if we draw them in multiples, which is super nice in the late game. So yeah, totally happy to have these. Next we're going to take out Frostlinks and replace it with Tempest Gen. So both of these cost 3, but the problem with the Frostlinks is it doesn't have flying. Tempest Gen on the other hand is an absolute powerhouse. It has power equal to the number of islands we control, which means that even if we play it on turn 3, the soonest that we can play it, it's still a 3 mana 3/4 with flying, so that's already pretty good. And then it gets even better as the game goes on. It gets more and more powerful with the more islands we have. So if we play it on turn 7 and we have 5 lands and it's a 5/4 flying for 3, or maybe it's going to be a 7/4 flying for 3, you know, it just gets crazier and crazier, and this thing can absolutely win games. It's great early game, turn 3, fantastic, but turn 5, 7, 10, whatever, it just gets better and better and more dangerous for the opponent. So it's fantastic. And for that reason, we're also going to take out 2 Cloudkin Seers for 2 more Tempest Gens. The Seers are kind of clunky. At 3 mana, 2/1 with flying, it's not that exciting. And drawing a card is nice, but I just think that outright winning with Tempest Gen is even better. So yeah, let's just replace this with a big beefy beater and win games with it. Am I right? Next we have a few of these Seers and Shamans floating around, so we're going to take out the rest of those for 3 Warkite Marauders. These are fairly aggressive little flyers. It's 2 mana, 2 power, it'll be pumped by favorable winds, so just get some power, some evasive power on the battlefield super quick. But what's great about this is that when it attacks, they basically turn off a creature for a turn. It makes the creature we target really small and they lose all abilities, and that includes flying. So this is basically going to shoot down any opposing blockers our opponent might have, so we can keep swinging away with our team of flyers. Next we'll take out 2 air elementals for 2 Sphinx of Foresight. I'm pretty sure I made this change in another Planeswalker deck video, and it's just as good here. I mean, they're both 4/4s with flying, but the Sphinx costs 1 less mana to cast, so it comes in a turn sooner, and it has all kinds of extra abilities to boot. It allows us to scry every single turn it's in play. Plus if we have it in our opening hand, we can reveal it and scry 3 before the game starts, which is practically cheating, except that it's not because it's printed on the card, so pretty fancy. But even if it didn't have all of those scrying effects, I mean, it's still the exact same body for 1 less mana, so yeah, this is just a no-brainer. Next, we're going to take out 2 Celestial Messengers for 2 more Sphinx of Foresight. This one is a little bit less clear-cut because the flash on the messengers is kind of fun. If you have your Planeswalker, the bird is a 4/3 and the Sphinx is a 4/4, and they both cost 4 mana. So you're basically trading the flash that you can flash in the bird and block an attacking creature and surprise your opponent by killing, something that they weren't expecting. But on the other hand, the Sphinx still has all of that scrying, which is pretty fantastic. So I still think the Sphinx is better here. Definitely recommended over the Celestial Messengers. And then lastly, we're going to take out a single island for a 4th Winged Word. The deck doesn't quite need 25 lands, and this is a fine replacement because if we do find ourselves lacking mana, then this can help us dig for it, and it can also draw us out of mana flood. So that's nice too. Basically drawing 2 cards for 1 mana is fantastic, and we don't need 25 lands, so yeah, this is fine. Cut it down to 24 lands, and you might as well just fill that spot with a card that can help you draw into more stuff. And that's it. That is all of our upgrades. If you want to spend a little bit more money on this deck, I think the best creatures that we couldn't afford are probably God Eternal Kefnet and Cavalier of Gales. Kefnet doesn't really make sense in this deck though, so I don't think it's a big deal. It's just a 4 mana 4/5 with flying, which is pretty nice, but I don't think it's like completely necessary. The Cavalier on the other hand would actually be a fantastic replacement for things like Yanling's Harbinger and Riddlemaster Sphinx, both of which are pretty so-so. And speaking of the Harbinger, by the way, you can also upgrade the Mu Yanling in the deck with the Sky Dancer variant. Her first ability is a little weaker, but keep in mind that she also comes into play 3 turns sooner, so yeah, it's a weaker ability, but also a faster planeswalker. And the big thing with the Sky Dancer variant is that the targeted creature loses all abilities. So once again, we have another way to shoot down troublesome flyers that are getting in the way of our attackers. So yeah, it's pretty decent. Her middle ability is costly and unreliable if she dies before you can activate it, but if you can pull it off, it puts a pretty decent threat on the battlefield, so that's cool. And I think both ultimates on both Planeswalkers will probably win the game, but either way, I do think the Sky Dancer is pretty decent. And what's a little bit weird actually, you could probably replace Mu Yanling with Tezzeret Artifice Master. I know it's weird because we're not an artifact deck, but the fact that he's basically a factory for 1/1 flyers actually works kind of okay in this deck with the favorable wins. And even though we aren't an artifact deck, all three of his abilities are actually kind of relevant, because the middle one, yeah, you need artifacts, but he produces artifacts, and it's still like you can 0 draw a card if you don't have 3, and if you do have 3 from the +1 ability, then you can draw 2, so it's fine. And the final ability, yeah, that works totally fine as well. So yeah, it's actually not terrible. Just keep in mind that this Tezzeret is kind of expensive, and he is rotating, so it's very expensive, and it's not going to be legal for very long, at least if you're playing in DCI sanctioned tournaments. So probably not worth it if you're just planning on playing Standard Showdown more casually, but you know, something to consider. Anyway, I think that's it. While this might not be a tier 1 competitive deck, what we now have is way more powerful than what we started with, and definitely a lot more consistent as well. If you've been losing games to the conflicting strategies in this deck with, you know, having cards that care about flash and having cards that care about flying, and then having random tempo cards that don't fit with the rest of the deck, hopefully this smooths out the deck a lot. It gives you a very consistent strategy. You know exactly what you want to do every game. Put flyers on the battlefield, turn them sideways, very simple. Right, so anyway, if you like these Planeswalker deck upgrade videos and want to see more of them, I have an entire playlist dedicated to them, and you can find a link to it in the description below. You'll also find my Amazon affiliate link. Literally anything you buy from Amazon after clicking that link helps me buy expensive crap for this channel. It doesn't cost you any extra, and it's a free way to show your support, so I appreciate that. Also consider subscribing for more upgrade guides in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.